Imagine you're a company commander in Afghanistan, and your company has been tasked to clear the valley. You have to clear house by house, but the rules are you cannot do so without partnering with the local police. The plan is to create a relationship with a local police chief in order to conduct the mission. One night, a young 10 to 12-year-old boy comes up to you and through the interpreter explains that he's being held as a sex object for the local police chief. He escaped and is asking for your help to get him out of there. What do? Do you decide to help him no matter what? Where would you take him? What if he's lying? What about your mission? Let's say you can't do anything that night, or you decide not to do anything that night and the boy goes away. But the situation just doesn't sit right with you, and you can't seem to shake the feeling that you have to do something. You gather your platoon leaders, your first sergeant, and you discuss the situation. What are some of your considerations? How about the danger of compromising your mission? How about the danger of compromising your relationship with the police chief if you decide to help this boy escape? How about being able to look at yourself in the mirror? Ultimately, you all decide that even if the situation is culturally acceptable in Afghanistan, it is just plain wrong in your eyes. You decide that if this boy escapes again and comes to you for help, you will do whatever you can to help him. The boy returns again the following night, and this time you help. You house him for the night, and then put him in a cab with some local money the next morning, send him off to Kandahar where he wanted to go. The story is based on real experience of a friend and colleague of mine. We will come back to it shortly. My name is Alex Rivera, and I'm here to discuss the importance of having ethical training throughout our military careers. Many of us have endured countless JAG presentations on ethics, on what you can or cannot do during elections, on how much you can spend on a retirement gift, right? I am by no means suggesting additional death by PowerPoint. I'm talking about meaningful training that can provide a foundation for ethical decision making. Let's go back to our story. The soldiers in the story were on an important mission that depended largely on their relationship with the local police and police chief. When presented with a dilemma of whether or not to intervene in order to save a young boy from what was essentially sex slavery, they decided to help, even at the possible detriment of their mission. As we discussed my friend's story, we discussed the reasons for their decision. They were mostly based on their own upbringing in middle-class America, in a fairly stable family. Their decisions essentially were based solely on their personal values. Values refer to a person's standards of behavior. They speak to one's lasting beliefs about what is good or bad, but for that reason, they are inherently very subjective. Speaking of values, let's talk about some football trickery. There are several videos on YouTube of football games where the quarterback simply walks with the ball as if the game hasn't started, while everyone just stares at him and basically does nothing in their confusion, trying to figure out what's going on. Suddenly, the quarterback starts sprinting way ahead of everyone else and scores a touchdown. What do you think about that? Now, I'm not a football fan, nor do I know football rules, but when I first watched one of these videos in our recent leadership class, I thought that was completely wrong. To my surprise, the class opinion was divided, with many believing that there was nothing wrong with that play. So apparently the rules do not prohibit such a play, and therefore, in the opinion of some, it was fair play. If you ask me again now, I still think it was completely wrong. What makes our opinions so different? What guides our decisions? How do we ensure that we do the right thing when there are no universal guidelines to go by? Sure, the Army has the Army values as our universal guidelines, but how each person interprets these values or how one prioritizes these values is different, and it is based on their own unique experiences. So let's go back to our first story for a moment. What would you do if you were in that situation? This is exactly the question that led me to this talk today. I don't really know what I would do if I were in that position. There lies a difficult dilemma, ethical dilemma, and I'm not really sure how I would handle it. I have been in the Army for over 20 years, and the first time I had any ethics training was just this past year at Command and General Staff College. Yet, we expect everyone in the military to make ethical decisions. We expect that everyone should make the right choices. But what is right and ethical? We couldn't even get one class of U.S. Army majors to agree on whether the high school football play was ethical or not. But we expect that everyone makes ethical decisions. This is the reason why I strongly believe that ethics training needs to be present throughout our careers. Ethics training can provide a foundation for reasoning through ethical dilemmas. Dr. Jack Kemp's ethical triangle is just one simple ethical decision-making tool that can provide that foundation. The training that we received on this ethical triangle during Command and General Staff College was no more than an hour or two. It hardly scratched the surface for anyone to understand the value it can provide. I recently did my thesis on military response to mass atrocities. I used Dr. Kemp's ethical triangle to examine the ethical basis of any military response to 3 different atrocity events. What that did is really help me formulate a way to reason through ethical dilemmas. It provided me with a basic tool that I can utilize to examine my decisions. The premise of the ethical triangle method is that ethical dilemmas are not between a right and a wrong choice, but rather between a right and a right choice. Once you identify the dilemma in a right versus right format, you can then reason through your choices utilizing 3 different approaches to ethics. Those are the principles-based, consequences-based, and virtues-based approaches. In summary, the principles-based approach examines what the rules are or what the rules should be. The consequences-based approach examines just that, the consequences of one's actions. And lastly, the virtues-based approach relies on what a good person would do, or WWJD. What would Jack, Dr. Kemp that is, what would Jack do? The ethical triangle tool is just a simple tool that can provide a good foundation for people to reason through when faced with ethical dilemmas. I'm sure there are many other tools out there, but they are no good if we're not utilizing them. If we expect our military to always behave in the most ethical way, wouldn't it make sense to provide them with the tools that they need to succeed? Ethical dilemmas and the choices we make leave a lot of room for moral injury. We put our young military folks through very difficult choices every day. We owe it to them and their families to provide them with a foundation and a tool that they can utilize to make sense of the sacrifices that we ask them to make. A better understanding of ethics can possibly help a young 18-year-old live with him or herself after the hard choices we ask them to make. Thank you.